Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
And good morning to you. I'm watching a robin take a bath in my little pond. You know, nature is it's sort of wonderful to live in a city and still be so surrounded by nature until it is. I went out my front door to walk my dog about 8 p.m. last night and walked out the door, and about 10 feet in front of me in my front yard, looking at me, was a fawn. And I mean, and normally I'd be thrilled to see a fawn. They're so cute, so pretty with their little spots. And I said, "Where's your mother?" Well, there was no mother around. I mean, I guess the fawn's big enough. And I told him, "Go away, because he's going to eat all my plants." So the deer, and then there were 2 rabbits in the next yard, and the birds right now in the pond. Somebody was freaking out about a snake on their porch, and it's like a black snake, or a rat snake, it's called. I mean, they're totally harmless and do good stuff, like eating the varmints you don't want in your house, I guess. And some people react with such horror to the animals around us. But the deer are a problem in the city, and it's a problem that for some reason the authorities don't want to deal with, and I'm not really certain why that is. The herd, the urban herd, has just grown exponentially and is destroying all the undergrowth in Frick Park, Shenley Park, you name the park in the city that the deer are in. And that's where they live, and it's what they're eating. And now there's not enough of that to eat, so they're leaving these wonderful big urban parks we have and heading into our neighborhoods. I had a buck that, I think I told you this, just like almost jumped over me and my dog on a very busy boulevard. Buck out of nowhere, coming out of a big house yard. I don't know. I don't understand why we're not able to deal with it. The answer, obviously, is to cull the herd. There's not enough. There's not enough for the herd to exist, still staying in its woodland. But I don't know what needs to be done. I think I've mentioned before that people who understand how forests grow are saying that the damage being done to our beautiful, beautiful big parks in the city could last for just decades and decades and decades, because little trees, seedlings, are not able to grow. There are no new trees replacing the trees that exist because the deer are eating them. It's a problem, and I don't understand it. And while it's sort of neat to walk out my front door and have a fawn staring at me, it suggests a problem. It truly suggests a problem. Okay, I didn't mean to even talk about any of that. What else? Starting a little, as I tend to do on oh my God, the Robin's got a friend who just came over and sort of knocked him out of his swimming pool. Now, it's so cute the way they bathe. Oh, my Lord. Nature, ladies and gentlemen, it is the greatest salve. As usual, I'm looking around at what I have available that I want to talk to you about or share with you. And I just can't quite figure out where to start. I came upon this little thing that I thought is so on the money. It's a quote, and it says, time is a created thing. To say I don't have time is like saying I don't want to, which is true. So make no mistake, if this is an excuse that you want to use, I don't have time, make no mistake, what you're telling the person is, I don't want to. And I think it comes across that way because we always, speaking of time being a created thing, we always make time. We create time for things we do want to do. So I don't have time is a bare euphemism for I don't want to. Just say. It's not my habit to watch professional basketball, but I did tune in last night to the second game of the NBA Finals, where an 8th seed is battling what could well be, the best team. I think without a doubt the best team going now. That's the Miami Heat at the 8th seed and the Denver Nuggets. And it was a fascinating game. It really was. I got so into it, mostly because I always, if there's a real Cinderella story going, I'm always getting hooked. So obviously I'm rooting for that number 8. And man, it was a great game. If you happen to have seen it. And so the series is tied. No, you don't expect me or want me probably to speak sports, but wow. Sports at the highest level is often a wondrous thing, isn't it, to watch? Wow. Just wow. I especially enjoy watching it when I don't really care. Because if I really cared, if I was invested, if it was, my team, I don't understand how there aren't more cardiac arrests during these kinds of, important games. Because when you're really, just that you could feel your anxiety building and building and building, and the amount of it gets you so worked up, really, watching a great contest. where it's a back and a forth and a back and a forth and a back and a forth. And if you care, oh my God, I just can't imagine. So I found this new thing to follow because I'm not getting a lot of local news anymore. I don't get the Post-Gazette. I don't get it digitally. I don't get it in any way, so I'm not reading it. I just can't watch local television news. So I'm not quite aware necessarily of what people are getting for local news. But so I learn about things now in ways, and again, I'm not certain whether I'm supposed to believe what I'm hearing. So on an app like Nextdoor, I learned that a place I had been just 2 hours before, that there's been an awful stabbing. And then a guy breaking into and I thought, what? I was just there. So I go looking for some kind of information about it. And can't find anything anywhere. It's taken me 2 days to get any information. And I talked to other people who live in that neighborhood. And what do you do here? Well, they didn't know. They heard a guy, critical condition, they think, stabbed a number of times. They think the perpetrator breaking into a house, leaving a bloody shirt, using the sink. And so when I said, and is the person in custody? How is it? And nothing is known. So what, and then people who actually still watch TV news will say, I didn't see anything about it. I specifically watched the news to see about it, and I didn't see anything about it. It's so odd that I'm beginning to feel that I do live in somewhat of a news desert. It's not like it used to be, where I had a sense that I was learning things that I should know about. And I don't think that's true anymore. And as you know, I go out of my way. So I go to all kinds of nonprofit news organizations, Public Source, The Incline, City Paper, WESA, yada, yada, yada. But none of them are set up like a daily newspaper. And even the daily newspaper, when I was still sneaking peeks at it, isn't what it used to be, and doesn't cover, and God knows it doesn't cover what it used to. And I won't read it now because it's put out by a bunch of scabs. Ain't gonna do it. So this source I found is apparently some guy who spends all his time, I can't imagine, listening to the police scanner in Pittsburgh. And he then posts things on it, on Twitter. I don't know if he does it on other forums, but it's just called Pittsburgh Scanner, at Pittsburgh Scanner, PGH Scanner. And so I just started following, and I gotta read. It's a riot. I mean, it is. I gotta read you a little of the post from just the weekend, okay? And it includes the guy being stabbed, but it's just a very quick. And that was the first time I saw. Oh, so that did happen, and whatever. This is from, I believe, Saturday, that police were after a man who jumped into the Allegheny River after apparently mugging somebody And the first thing he says, he is swimming across the river, this guy, right toward the police waiting on the other side. And then River Rescue shows up. And there's an update later saying, man now sees the police on all sides and is hanging on a red buoy. Buoy. Police informed that this is a known biter. The guy in the river, they know him, and they know he bites, is a known biter. River Rescue is going to pick up this, I believe he means piece of shit, an attempt to, anyway, later it's clear the guy was fighting them. They did get him, and he was taken away for some kind of medical evaluation. Meanwhile, downtown Stanwyck Street, a male is running around in the nude. All Zone 2 units are tied up due to the guy in the river, and Zone 1 is assisting. So, I don't know. So if you were downtown on Saturday, there's this thing happening on the river, the perps swimming across the Allegheny, the cops in boats and on land. And meanwhile, there's nobody to get the nude guy who's running around on Stanwyck Street. And that isn't enough. Allegheny Center, South Commons, a case of vodka fell off a delivery truck, causing a frenzy. The later post says, police say, an on-scene report says there's nothing left of the booze. And then right under that is Shadyside, Lehigh Avenue, 22-year-old stabbed in the neck. Now that must be the thing I heard about, but that's all there is. So in between the vodka coming off the trucks, the naked guy running around Stanwyck, and the biter in the Allegheny River, oy. So I think this is a good, this is a very entertaining thing to follow. And I'm so glad. Oh, and there's even another. This is all from this weekend. Mount Washington. 200 block of Shiloh, male in gray shorts and white t-shirt walking up to people and hitting them with a broom. Update. PD had an idea of who it was, and they were right. 2 units going to sit around and babysit while the incident board is clear. Oh my God. One more. Allegheny Center, Pittsburgh Aviary, 2 males with red shirts walking around with long guns, believed to possibly be Pride Parade security. An update. Police confirm these are private licensed security hired by Pittsburgh Pride. So I mentioned last week that Pittsburgh Pride was spending up to 30% of its budget this year on private security. And I didn't have a sense that it was guys in t-shirts walking around with long guns. Jeez. So anyway, that's just something from the police blotter, and that's now my favorite source for local police news. God almighty. Okay, getting a little more serious, I guess. Great quote from a guy named Kevin Williamson. And I mean, great quote because I say it's a great quote because, of course, I agree totally with it. For those who don't get the Ukraine thing and and why it is important. I think this guy's got it right. The randomness, stupidity, and cruelty of Vladimir Putin's war on Ukraine doesn't suggest a superpower at all, or even an expired superpower, or an aspiring once and future superpower. What it most suggests is a stagnant, psychotic state. You may not think that the U.S. has any great interest in seeing Ukraine win, but the U.S. does have an abiding and critical interest in seeing Russia lose. And there it is. This Putin's Russia is, well, I think the guy's right, calling it a psychotic, a stagnant, psychotic state. And with a guy at the helm who read his own PR and believed it, or he actually believed, the praise that was heaped on him being a great genius by the then president of the United States. Putin has clearly shown himself to be no genius at all. And he, by himself, has brought his country to, well, painted them into a corner, I guess. But with a psychotic at the head, it's not something that you want to see. Because the more Russia is bleeding, literally, because of its misadventure in Ukraine, and the more defeat heaped on Putin, the more humiliation heaped on Putin, and then he turns around and inflicts it on his own people, the reality is the less capacity he is going to have to make mischief in other places. He is bogged down now, and that's the only good news. What to do about Putin and Russia is a concerning part. There was a piece in the New York Times that just makes your skin crawl. But Russia, it is reported, is militarizing its children. This is what happens in a stagnant, psychotic state. There's a new version of the ABCs when kids are learning A, B, C, D, the way that kids learn it through song, and in the Russian version, A, everything has to stand for something. A, like A is for apple. No. A is for army. And on it goes with this militarized thing. Little kids at a swim meet recently in Russia. This was adolescent, so like middle schoolers, high schoolers. They wore camouflage swimwear. Everywhere these kids are turning in Russia, they are being told and they see military, army. Actually, at the swim meet, forgot this part, while some were wearing, camo swimsuits and another team came in with Kalashnikov rifles slung across their shoulders. This is a swim meet. The theme adopted for math classes. This is most. There was a theme for math classes at elementary schools. And the theme was diapers and paper stars, suggesting bullet holes were put on a target board, which was, the blackboard. But the whole theme of now we're learning math, pretending to be shooting things. It just apparently, it says here, as the war in Ukraine rolls into its 16th month, educational programs all across Russia are awash in lessons and extracurricular activities that are built around military themes and equating it with patriotism. And there is no doubt about what that's about. We in this country are dealing with our own concerns about children being indoctrinated in schools. Of course, children have always been indoctrinated in schools. In this country, there's concern about who decides what indoctrination is. What is history and what is indoctrination? But there is little doubt that this is Putin's campaign to truly militarize Russian society by training the youth to revere the military. And that's, my heart breaks for those children in that country. But, wow, they are being taught from day one that they are at war and we are the enemy, that they are under attack. It doesn't matter that they're the ones, of course, who instigated the attack. They crossed a border. No one crossed theirs. And think these kids are going to learn that? No. Anyway. Yeah, Russia's no superpower, and Putin's no genius. But they got a ton of nuclear weapons. And maybe that makes you a superpower, I guess. So I just wanted to point that out because I haven't talked about Ukraine and Russia for some time, but it's always on my mind. Strange story out of I saw it unfold on, again, Twitter yesterday when someone tweeted, and I saw it when the tweet absolutely, it had just gone up. A woman in Washington, D.C. tweeted, "What was that? What was that? A sonic boom? My house shook. Was it an earthquake?" And then I start seeing other people saying, "I'm in, Maryland. I felt it. My dishes rattled. What was that?" And so I started wondering, what was that? And the story got more and more intense and as it unfolded, that it was a sonic boom as fighter jets taking off from Andrews Air Force Base. What later was learned is that they were checking out a private plane, a Cessna, that had wandered into territory over DC that private planes are not allowed. And so these jets were scrambled. And when the jets went up, what they saw, they could see in the plane. Were trying to talk to the pilot. Air traffic control was trying to talk to the pilot. No response, no response. The plane had flown all the way up to Long Island where it was supposed to land. And instead of landing, it turned around and was heading back to where it had come from. And that's where it wandered into District of Columbia airspace. That's when the fighter jets went up, scaring the bejeebers out of, tens of thousands of people in a 3-state area with the sonic boom. And when those jet fighter pilots went up, they could see that there was nothing they could do. That plane was flying. They could see people in the plane, and none of them were responsive. So that plane crashed eventually. It had the good sense to crash into a wooded area. But the feeling was that this was, when they, really look into it, is that this was probably a case of loss of cabin pressure, resulting in unconsciousness of all aboard. And those aboard were a young woman, her 2-year-old child, their nanny, and the pilot. And they're all dead. But it caused, it's just something like that happened to years and years ago. There was a golfer. Wasn't there a golfer whose name we all if you followed golf at all, you sort of knew that name. And I think he died like that too. He was in the plane. They couldn't contact, and there's nothing to be done in a case like that, where no one was in control or even conscious. Because we are certainly aware of when people are conscious, it is possible to talk them into landing a plane, even if they never have landed a plane in their lives. But this was a strange story. Okay, I know I'm full of ridiculous stories right now. I got one more. I mentioned airports, airlines, airplanes. This, and again, I don't know if this is true. I don't know if anything's true anymore. I feel like I'm potentially, and this is true, always being played. So that when I see reports on whatever my sources are, I used to believe what I read. I used to know that some sources were literally reliable sources. And now I have no sense of that at all. I have a little bit of a sense. I mean, I still trust pretty much, certain. Oh, thank you, Art. I'm remembering that. Payne Stewart was the guy's name. 1999. Yeah. Wow. So I mean, those planes don't have, if they, like in a big plane, they don't have the kind of, where you can put on an oxygen mask. They don't have it. Okay, so here's another story. I don't know if it's true. I just loved it. Okay? This has to do with a scene at, I believe it was JFK Airport. And, you know, airports are, God, they're not fun. And they are often scenes of people behaving badly. I mean, because people are stressed, their planes are late, or the crew doesn't show up, or weather or mechanical failure or whatever the hell they're telling you, which you can sometimes believe but probably shouldn't. And for whatever reason, a flight, in this case, a flight had been canceled, and all these people were whose flight had been canceled were in line with the ticket agent trying to get on another flight. Now, these are not happy people. Each one has an unhappy story, some greater than others. And speaking of unhappy, there's one poor woman, the ticket agent, having to deal with all of this. And she doing her best, but apparently some guy barrels through the crowd, elbows his way, and bangs his fist, and he said, "I need a ticket immediately, and I need first class." And she says, "Yes, well, I'll try to help you, but would you please get in line? Everybody is waiting in line." "I will not get in line. I need a ticket." She said, "Sir, please, I need you to get in line." And then he said it. He said, "Do you know who I am?" And the woman picked up her microphone, you know, her public address microphone, and said, "May I have your attention, please? We have a passenger at gate 14 who does not know who he is. If anyone can help him with his identity, please come to gate 14. Is that not great? So everybody starts laughing, hysterically applauding her. And the guy goes berserk and he screams at her. She was a United Airlines agent. He screams at her, not surprising, "Fuck you." And she smiled at him and said, "I'm sorry, sir. You'll have to get in line for that, too." Is that even possible that somebody could be that cool under pressure? I'm asking. You see why I think I'm always getting played? That's just too good to be true. It's just too good to be true. But anyway, anything that can make us laugh. So, what we got here? I'm looking. Oh, I love this. Two things on the culture war legal front. A creative person wanting to take on the book banners decided, well, I'm going to have to make a complaint about a book too, I guess. And so this person, a woman, this is in Utah. Yeah, it's a Utah school district. She wrote out what I guess you end up having to do now. You make a complaint. And And she submitted it, and the book she was complaining about was the Bible. And she wanted it removed. She said, because according to the new statewide definition, it is pornographic and not age appropriate for elementary and middle schoolers. And unbelievably, the school district had to agree that by the letter of the law, she was right. So the Bible got pulled from elementary and middle schools in that district. Oh, God. And, you know, the people who drafted these bills, like, as a matter of fact, the guy who sponsored the bill in the Senate allowing books to be pulled from the shelves, said that he said, well, it is a fair trade. He didn't say it didn't work and that he wasn't outraged. This is clearly what the person wanted. He says, it's a fair trade for the removal of other books containing what I believe is really explicit, X-rated content. People have their Bibles at home. I'm not going to sweat this. Oh, God. So, unbelievable. Okay, the other one is, and big shock here too, right? That I forget what idiotic state did the drag queen? I mean, I know there's other states that are outlawing drag shows. Can you imagine? I mean, drag has been an entertainment form forever. In fact, it was made necessary by the fact that women weren't allowed to act. So men played women's roles. And now the lunatics on the right think that drag shows are about grooming impressionable children. I don't think so. Anyway, so all that goes to court. Tennessee law that banned drag shows where children could possibly see them. And I think it was the ACLU that brought this case. It certainly would seem to be, since it's so clearly a First Amendment issue. I mean, doesn't the First Amendment allow for free expression and be able to wear whatever clothes you want, stuff like that? Yeah, so it's so clearly a violation of the First Amendment, and yet overwhelmingly passes and signed by the governor when any idiot could tell him it's unconstitutional. Well, it gets to a federal judge, and the judge said, it's unconstitutional. And here's the thing. The judge who just flat out ruled it unconstitutional was appointed by Donald Trump. Do you know how unconstitutional you have to be that a Trump-appointed judge has no wiggle room if he is to have any respect as a jurist? And what was he going to do? It's It's so unconstitutional. It's mind-blowingly unconstitutional. So that's the good news, and yet they'll still Republican legislatures will continue to pass these just blatantly unconstitutional measures, because that's what they do. I read something that it's so alien to me, and yet was such a delight. A totally different perspective on life. How someone lived a life that I would have, if I were looking on, would have said, "Why, it's irresponsible. Why, it's an outrage." I definitely would have. And his daughter wrote an appreciation of him. Maybe some of you saw this. It was, I believe, in the Sunday Times, the opinion section. But the author wrote about her father and the way he lived his life. And as I said, this is not what I would say is a good role model for your children. She adored this man. Her name is Beth Raymer. And she starts out by talking in 2015 how her father and she decided they would go on a vacation. Actually, he was going to take her on a vacation. Here's the thing. He was homeless. He was homeless in Miami. And she said he was living on the street, excuse me, and he didn't have a car. So we took mine. Dad knew what meters were out of service. So we parked for free. And then from the back seat, he grabbed 2 heavy-duty garbage bags stuffed with his life belongings. And they walked into the lobby of the hotel. And the daughter sees the desk, the agent at the desk looking at the garbage bags and the guy and her. And the daughter sees her looking, thinks, "Oh, God, they're not going to let us stay here. They're going to throw us out." But unbelievably, her father produces a credit card. And it goes through. And they're in. She says, after a quick high five in the elevator, we tossed our bags in the room and headed to the sun deck for happy hour. And in an instant, my father was no longer homeless. He was just another dad in his swimming trunks, flashing his gin and tonic to the waiter. And she then gives her father's philosophy. For most of my life, my father's philosophy was that no matter how unstable, life was meant to be celebrated. This is a guy who was a car salesman. And he was a car salesman until he wasn't. He always got fired. He got fired for things like punching out the boss. And he was always losing his job. He was always going into credit card debt. He was what I would call, a totally irresponsible person. And then she tells us this. The first thing Dad always did when he got fired was take us on a family vacation. They were never planned. He'd walk in the door carrying his box of personal belongings from whatever dealership he had just been fired from. And the next thing we knew, we're off to Key West, Key Largo, Siesta Key, Bahamian resorts with water slides, and swimming with dolphins. Our suites had groomed lawns and tennis courts, jacuzzi baths, and silver buckets of ice champagne. Dad would pop the cork so that it ricocheted off the ceiling and bounced off the wall, and my sister and I would search for it, and he'd give $100 to whichever one of us got it. And then she talks about how this lifestyle, obviously, isn't going to last. His wife finally leaves him. He ends up losing another job. And his daughter says, so he assumed he just gets scooped up by another dealership, just like he always did, but that is not what happened. This was during when the economy was bad, like probably 2008, 2009. He said the economy was in ruins. He had 2 mortgages on one house, and he was 69 years old. And so, knowing his house was going to be foreclosed, this guy blasted Shania Twain on his next to his pool, lying on his lounge chair, sunbathing. The pool was now green, covered with algae. The daughter remembers going and helping him pack up what he had. And on he went. And then he ends up truly homeless. And he didn't mind it. And he always told her, don't worry. What he said to her is, don't worry about me, Pumpkin. I was in the service. Up Kent in the wilderness. This is no different. And so they enjoyed this holiday. And she pointed out that they even went parasailing. She said, which I'm kind of afraid to mention, given that many people are adamantly against poor people enjoying themselves. It's a deeply held American sentiment that those experiencing financial hardship should not have things like iPhones or eat organic food. Imagine how they'd feel about a homeless guy gliding through the clouds. And I laughed out loud when I read that. All of a sudden, this guy, to me, seemed heroic. Just seemed heroic. Her dad died during the pandemic. He had one possession that his daughter found: a can of Armor Treat luncheon loaf. And she said, for a man who spent 40 years in the car business, working 12-hour days, to arrive at the end of his life owning so little may seem tragic. But in a way, I found it inspiring, she wrote. So that, for me, was the greatest thing I read this weekend, because it runs contrary to everything that I believed. And that there's something somehow wondrously grand about this character. And obviously his daughter felt the same. But my God. Wow. And then there's this other thing that also made me smile. So I want to share with you these things that made me happy. You know how, runners, when you see them, they generally are, thin. There's a runner's body. And I remember when I've watched like the Pittsburgh Marathon or other marathons, and you see some sort of heavy-set person lumbering by, you think, my God, how are they doing that? And are they safe? Are they going to make it? Well, this was a story about a guy who weighs 300 pounds. And he has run a whole bunch of marathons. And his whole thing is letting people know that there is not a runner's body. It doesn't matter what body you have, it can run. And he created this virtual community called the Slow AF Run Clubs. AF standing for as fuck. Slow as Fuck Run Club. Thousands of people worldwide belong to it. This character's been on the cover of Runner's World. Martinus Evans. And there's something so joyous about his refusal to be sort of... He was running in the New York Marathon, way, way, way at the back of the pack. And some jerk from, the sidewalk screamed at him, "You're too fat! Go home!" And he was embarrassed and angry, but it was that remark that got him into thinking, I will not go home. There is nothing wrong with being at the back of the pack. And he had weighed a lot more than 300 pounds. A lot more. And when he started really running, he lost about 90 pounds, and it dropped him below 300 for the first time in his adult life. But he realized that when he focused on running, losing weight while running, he didn't feel the satisfaction he had felt. He said, I wasn't 90 pounds happier. So he decided, I'm going to stop counting calories and I'm just going to run because it's running I like. So he did. And the first rule of the Slow as Fuck Run Club is that members cannot talk about their weight or weight loss. It exists as an app. The club's app is free to join. So you can join this thing. He ain't making money off of that. He has since gotten a master's degree in public health research. And more than a decade after he first started running, he has 8 marathons to his name. and he still weighs 300 pounds. What a great guy. I just want to say I'm in love with this guy. The founder of the Slow as Fuck Run Club. He has even posed nude for Men's Health. And he has appeared in an Adidas ad. And he, like the other guy, the homeless one, is a person who is true to themselves. So the stories of both those guys and the United ticket counter agent made my weekend. Just wanted to share them. And if you read all that yourself, I'm sorry. You got to stop reading the same thing I'm reading because it's just going to be a repeat. So that's it for me. And I'll be back tomorrow with Susan in tow. Enjoy this beautiful day.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.